Witches and Prose podcast. My name is Haley Camarillo, author of Fury and Flame, book 1 of the Witching Hour series, which will be out this October. Today I have with me author Arabella K Federico with her upcoming novel, Mark of Chaos and Creation. Thank you so much for being on today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course, we're going to have so much fun today. So can you tell us a little bit about the Mark of Chaos and Creation? Love
it. Sorry. It's a young adult sci-fi fantasy, and it's kind of like, I like to call it genre bending because it really is. It's sci-fi fantasy, and it's got like a metaphysical twist that most books in the sci-fi fantasy genre don't do. It's not, it hasn't been done before as far as I have known it to. So yeah, I'm excited.
That's very awesome. So who would you say like your ideal reader would be?
Definitely the older YA audience, someone probably 16 and up. People who are like into like witchy stuff, like reincarnation, matrix theory, obviously sci-fi fantasy fans. But yeah, someone who just likes something a little different, but still likes those same tropes, like enemies to lovers, found family, stuff like that. Like all the fun YA tropes that people love.
Yes, awesome. We love a good trope. We love them.
Yeah.
So what inspired your book?
I have kind of just like been a nerd my whole life. When I was in 7th grade, I had like Lord of the Rings and Spider-Man fan fiction that I wrote in like those old school notebooks. And so from that young age, I just love to tell stories. And so I wouldn't say that this specific story came from something specific. It's more just like my love of like the genres that I write in, like superheroes and fantasy and sci-fi and weird stuff. I didn't get into like the metaphysical angle up until a few years ago, and that kind of came into it like randomly. I wasn't intending for that to come into it, and then it did. I don't know. So yeah, it's just kind of everything at once, if that makes any sense.
No, that's cool. That's awesome. I love that it kind of just morphed into something, and it was just a big like mixture of all the things you love. That's really cool.
Yeah,
really awesome. Okay, so you said a little bit about your writing journey, how you started in like middle school writing in notebooks. Did it start before then, or was it like, have you always been a storyteller?
I'd say around like the 7th grade mark. Really, it was like I'm not sure how old you are, but the old Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, right at my age.
I was obsessed with that movie. Like I saw it in theaters, I think like 13 times. So it was for something about that film. I don't know why but it was the story of it. And I think of kind of like that, like he was such a like dorky nerd, and then he got all these powers, and it was just a good story to me back then, and it just sparked this thing in me that I was like, I want to tell stories. And The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, that was another one. I watched that last night. It's like my comfort film. So that was another one I wrote fan fiction of, and Lord of the Rings. And so it just like, I don't know, those movies got me wanting to tell stories, and I don't know why, but that's kind of how it started for me. And then when about 8 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a book now. I've always done little things and always wanted to write stories, and then I tried, and I was like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. This is really hard, actually. And so I kind of put a pause on that, and I studied craft over the years. I went to beauty school, and I studied craft while I was in school, and over time, it took me about 4 years, off and on of doing that. I was like, okay, I kind of have a grasp of this now. I'm going to start to write my book. And that's when I started about 3.5 years ago, is when I started the first draft. And that's when I actually finished my first book, was then. And that was the first draft of what is now the Mark of Chaos and Creation. And so I actually rewrote it 3 times. Ridiculous. I rewrote it times, and the third draft is what is now the finished book. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I totally understand about the rewrites. I think I rewrote my book that's coming out in October 3 times as well.
Yeah. It's, is it your first one that you ever did?
This isn't my first, this is my second book that I've ever done. Well, okay, technically it's my first manuscript that I ever finished, but I came back to it after writing another book. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But
yeah, and sometimes you just need to rewrite it. Like, so that's just
exactly
how it has to happen sometimes. But that's okay.
It is. As long as it gets done, that's all that's matters. All that matters.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
So, okay, what is your writing process like? Are you a little bit more plotter, pantser, a little bit of both?
Definitely kind of a plotting snob a little bit. If you've watched any of my like writing advice videos, you'd be like, yeah, she's kind of a snob about it. But I will plot out, like, I use the 3x structure with the Save the Cat, so I combine them together. And so I do all those plot beats, but I do like to pants the chapters themselves. And that leaves a little bit of fun for me. And I actually find, I don't know if you do this in your writing, but like, I'll be just like writing something and then I'll be like, it was total accident. I'm like, oh my God, that fits so perfect.
Yeah.
So that kind of happens with the little details, but I could never just like go in and pants a book. I don't care how anybody else does it. Like, if something works for someone, I'm like, hot dog, great, you do that. But I just, no, I can't.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
It's such a fine line. I used to be much more of a pantser. I think that was why I had to rewrite twice this book, because I pantsed it both the first 2 times, and then I was like, you know what, I need to have some sort of structure, and now it's a lot better. Like,
yeah, it's important. Even if you do like a skeletal like structure, I feel like that's better than just like going in blind. But there's some people it like works for them, like they could just do it and they're so good at it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could.
Yeah. I know. It's amazing. It amazes me when people can just truly pants a book.
Yeah.
It's an art.
It is. It absolutely is.
So let's see. With the mark of chaos and creation, is there any romance in it? And if so,
yeah. Yes, of course. So it is a YA, so there's no spice, but I'm thinking it will have spice potential, because the MC Kara, she's 17, so she'll be 18 later, and so it'll up in the spice later on. I think Raven Kennedy did that with Guild a little bit, except I just started that book and it's pretty dang spicy, so I don't know.
The first really chapter spicy.
So I was just like, I thought she had no spice in that, but then I just started it and I'm like, okay. But anyway, back to your question. Yes, it has a love triangle in this one. And it's obviously enemies to lovers, but what's a little different about mine is it's kind of double enemies to lovers. So the love triangle is a double enemy with her. Yeah, it's cool.
That's very fun. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say that your biggest struggle with writing this book has been?
Oh gosh, I'd say like the perfectionism, which is kind of just me. It's hard because like as someone who like teaches craft, I feel like I'm held up to like a higher standard. I think that could just be in my brain, in my own head. But like, if I'm teaching people something, I should be following that advice. I should know what I'm talking about, right? And that is really hard because I've seen other people who teach craft and their books are like not good. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is happening here? Like you seemed, and teaching something and doing something are totally different skills. I will say that. I have a knack for teaching. When I graduated from beauty school, I worked with a major cosmetics company and I taught a lot of their, not seminars, but like I taught people about the product. And doing sales, it just naturally kind of made me a good teacher. And so I just love to do it. And so it's this pressure of trying to like do what I'm telling people to do, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard because there's so much to a novel, as you know. There's the plot and the character and the theme and the mood and the subplots and the romance, and it's so hard to get every element right every time.
Yeah.
So and you know, it's not going to be perfect. I've had to accept that, but that's been the hardest part, to let it go, and to just hope that it's good enough and that people get it, because it, you know, it is a very high concept. You know, it's a little different than your average, you know, plain Jane YA fantasy. But yeah, you know, it's hard when you know, like, people just aren't gonna like it no matter what, no matter how good it is. You know, there are people who don't like pizza, so
exactly right. Crazy people, in my opinion.
Crazy. I know. Like, who are you?
Right?
You know, people are nuts.
Do you have a favorite character, supporting or main? Anyone? And we can go over a couple if you can't choose between one. I know some people can't.
It's hard, yeah. I really do like my main character. Her name is Kara, and what's kind of funny is that my beta readers hated her. Everybody hated her. And I was like, oh no, she's not based off of me at all. No. And so I had to, like, not restructure her at all, but I had to kind of like make her more relatable and stuff. And once I did that, I felt like everyone liked her after that. And so, which is hopefully a good thing, or, and you know, they were being honest about it. But she's cool because she is like she's a tattoo artist, and she's covered in tattoos, and she's kind of like this like badass brat, and she really doesn't give a shit, but she is so sensitive on the inside and so vulnerable. And there's these points in the book where she has these super vulnerable moments that it made my editor cry. Actually, on one of her notes, she was like, oh my god, I'm crying. I'm like, stop, you know. And so I like her because of that, because, you know, you get a lot of those strong female protagonists who are just like, I'm such a badass, and Kara is a badass, but I really tried to give her this super vulnerable side to her, and give her like a lot of issues. She's kind of like messed up in the head, and, you know, I did just say that I kind of based her off of me, but I think we all do that. I think everyone's like first main character is like them, but like if they were cool.
Yes
like her. I think my second favorite is my villain. So his name is Malachite. He's the big baddie, and I like him so much because he's really motivated by his obsession with her. Like, that's really his only thing. You have to kind of read the book to get to that point. I'm kind of giving a little bit away by saying that, but he's just like #obsessed. It doesn't even explain it with him. But like those villains that are motivated by love are just so intriguing to me, because it gives, again, a human element to them. And he's just kind of like that dark-haired, like powerful, high status villain that's like sexy, and you're like, oh, he's bad, but oh, I like
so
you.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know.
It sounds like I have a new favorite character. So
yeah, he's cool.
Just slap the dark, you know, kind of broody hero, broody character with a villain, and
I know, it gets me too, and it's awful. The other love interest is blonde, and I guess blonde love interests aren't like a thing. I didn't know that. Whatever. So I actually have a plan in the second book to have his hair is going to be dyed like a dark midnight blue, because he needs like a disguise. So I'm like, okay, scratching that off the list. Shit. Whatever.
I know, it's so funny. People do have an issue with the blonde love interest. It's so funny. Like,
I mean, I don't like to date blondes. I like dark-haired dudes in real life, so like I get it. But there are like hot, like Thor's blonde. Everybody loves Thor.
Right?
Like, I don't I don't know, but so I have a funny feeling people are gonna like Malachite over him.
Okay.
But yeah, he's a little bit his name is Ardell, the blonde. He is kind of unlikable at the beginning. But you kind of like, he warms up, especially he warms up to her because they're not exactly friends at the beginning. And yeah, there's a whole thing with that, but you got to read it to find out.
I cannot wait. Let's see. So this, let's see. Oh, okay. Putting you on the spot here a little bit. Sorry. Do you have a favorite scene, without being spoilery, that you could potentially like kind of let us know about to give us an idea?
Yes, actually, one just came to mind and it's great. So, Kara is kind of forced to go on a date with Malachite, and of course she like hates him, and it's really it's kind of like cheeky and cute, and they're like walking, it's at sunset and they're walking to this like floating restaurant on the side of the river that he like, you know, kicked everyone out of, so it's just the two of them and they're walking along the river. And if you mentioned the cover, so the sword on the cover is actually, we actually got it custom drawn and created. So it's not like a stock photo sword, it's my sword, and we use the description of the book to make it, obviously. And so he is giving her the sword on this date, like personally, and it's like an apology for something that he's done. And it's really the point where she like kind of starts to see him as like not this villain in her mind that she's built him up to be. He's more of the villain in the enemy than Ardell is. So she has a lot more to overcome emotionally with him. And yeah, it's a really cool scene. And he brings this really gorgeous gown to the house that she's staying in. And you know, it, like I describe her, you know, coming down the stairs and like what it looks like. And it that was actually like one of the last minute scenes that I added after my latest revision. And so it was never really supposed to be there, but yeah, I don't know why, I don't even know what made me think of it, but he had to give her the sword personally. So I'm like, okay, like he should do something special for her, because all the other characters get a cool weapon too, but he makes this gesture to her, like, and he gives it to her personally, kind of like, because I told you he loves her, so he wants to try to make a good impression, and he does. And it's a really cute scene. It's one of my favorites.
That sounds awesome. I am very excited to read that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So last question. Why should a reader take a chance on you as a first-time author?
So great question. Like I mentioned before, you know, I teach craft and I have learned so much about storytelling and why people respond to certain stories versus others. And I feel like I have a good grasp on what works and what makes a good story. So there's that, but I also am like a super creative person. You know, I see things in, you know, a little bit of a different way. And so I know readers are always looking for something different and fresh and cool. But there's a fine line between going too different and, you know, still doing what works. And I feel like I'm hopefully in the perfect middle ground with that. And, you know, like keeping those tropes that go on over and over and over that people really like. And yeah, I think that's why someone should take a chance on me, because I have, you know, I don't know if you could call it experience, but when you study something for years and years, like I have, you know, you learn. And when I teach, I learn too. Another reason why I love to teach is because I still learn every time I talk about something. And I try to make sure that I put that into the book and practice what I preach and try to make this a book that I would give a 5-star to, because I don't even know the last time I gave a 5-star, to a book. Like, that's hard. Like, you got to like blow my mind with this, and another reason, Brandon Sanderson's editor edited this book.
Oh, that's
So
very exciting.
yes,
Awesome.
super fancy, and she actually really likes it. I think she believes in it more than I do. Don't know how. She's amazing. So she actually worked on Mistborn. So her and I have gone through this book with a fine-tooth comb, and yeah, she believes in it. She likes it. And hey, he's super successful. So
Right. Well, hopefully that it sounds like you are set up to have an amazing book, and I can't wait to read it. When does it come out again? Did we go over that? I'm not sure. So let us know.
Yeah, it'll come out September 6th, in ebook and paperback, and hardback will be coming soon, probably around Christmas, in like a special hardback fancy edition, but I'm not going to release hardback immediately. But yeah, September 6th is right around the corner.
Yeah.
It's scary. Doing that first book is really scary. So,
But
yeah.
I wish you all the success, and I think that you're going to do amazing.
Thanks, hon.
Of course. And thank you so much for being on today. I had so much fun chatting about your book, and you and the writing process. It's been so much fun.
Yes, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Good. Well, thank you guys for watching the Witches and Prose podcast. We will see you next time.
Bye.